Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Bloodhaus. I'm your host, Joshua Conkel.
And I'm your co-host, Drusilla Adeline.
And we are the show where we talk about art house horror movies. How are you, Drew? What's going on?
I'm doing crazy well. I just saw Prince at the New Beverly last night, so I am jazzed all the hell up. How are you doing?
Ooh, I'm good. Not really much to say. I haven't been leaving my house or doing much of anything.
That's probably for the best.
Yeah, I mean, I've been like reading a lot and relaxing a lot and trying to go to the gym and drink water and all that healthy stuff.
Well, it's still January, so you're allowed to say that.
I know. I mean, I guess right off the bat, I wanted to get into what our hopes and dreams are for this podcast, what the expectation should be. Again, this is the show where we talk about art house horror. And I think, we have to have a reckoning with some terminology and the fact that there's a lot of people in the horror community for who that might seem like a turnoff. And one of the biggest reasons for that, I think, is this term elevated horror, which became so popular in the 2010s, which was sort of, in my mind, the big recent decade of quote unquote elevated horror. I used to have a spicy hot take about this, which was that I used to feel like, well, what's the big deal? I don't know why this term bothers people so much, because for me, it was like a marketing term, right? It told me like what I could expect from a movie. Am I going to get Hereditary or am I going to get Ma? And I like both of those movies a lot, and I want both of those movies. So for me, it was just like a term that helped set expectations. But when I talked to enough people about why it bothered them, I changed my mind, and I do get it, because I'm sure that and anyone who is listening knows this is a genre that's very maligned and misunderstood. And I think all of us have spent our lives defending it and trying to tell people why we love it and why it's important and so special to us. So I do get it. When people hear the term elevated horror, it does infer that other horror movies are not elevated, and that's not true. It sort of infers that these movies are better than other horror movies. So right off the bat, I just want to reckon with that and say to anyone listening, Drusilla and I are both people who watch horror movies broadly, who love horror movies broadly, and this show is not about putting these movies above any other movies. It's just to say these are movies that we happen to really love, especially, and we want to share our enthusiasm for them. And beyond that, this just wasn't taken. I mean, there's like a specific horror podcast about like every other thing, and this seemed to be an opening, and so we took it. So, I mean, Drusilla, maybe you could talk about your background in horror and how you kind of came to these movies.
Yeah, I mean, I really came in through the art house side of thing. I was afraid of horror films as a kid, saw them as being entirely too much for me. And yet, when I became a weird little teenage punk in the Midwest, I discovered like art house films at my library and fell in love with like horror cinema through France and Japan, and like was watching Eyes Without a Face and Hausu and like Cronenberg movies, and was like, wow, this stuff's great. And then that led me back into like your Tobe Hoopers and your John Carpenters, and I was like, oh, okay. So I've always viewed horror from the like artistic, political, and kind of like outsider art narrative that it is. So like something like Eaten Alive has just as much like artistic merit and value as Hereditary, as The Beyond, as Suspiria, both versions.
Absolutely. Yep.
As like the original James Whale movies. So I see it all as one giant artistic spectrum, and that makes me so happy.
Yeah.
What's your background like?
Well, it's the exact opposite of yours, because I'm an 80s baby, right? I'm like a geriatric millennial. And so for me, it started with the 80s video store. So, of course, the franchises like Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th, but also the sleazier VHS titles. And by the way, I don't mean sleazy pejoratively. I mean it as a compliment.
Sleazy like as in sexy.
Sleazy isn't
like
sexy or icky or yeah, like but I'm talking about movies, of course, like Sleepaway Camp or anything like that you would have gotten at the video store in 1986. That's where I came through. And then from there, I went to cult movies and B movies like John Waters and Roger Corman and stuff like that. Then to art movies like David Lynch and stuff like that. And then in the 2010s, it kind of all came together with the invention of like, not invention, that's the wrong word, but like A24 and the rise of these sort of art house horror movies, which also got me to go back and look at 70s movies, because I think a lot of the contemporary or 2010s art house horror movies are really in conversation with 70s horror movies. And so they kind of go together a little bit. So for me, it's the exact opposite of your path, and also like a really long, twisted, circuitous path to get here.
Yeah, I mean, most film journeys are like that, and that's what makes them so unique and so special, and why that's why everyone's take on film is so interesting and fascinating to me, because we are all inherently different people with different opinions and personalities and walks of life from different parts of the world, and we approach art forms radically differently.
Yeah.
And these being such transgressive, in your face, very loud films, again, whether it's Frankenhooker or Don't Look Now, these are really loud, very important films. And so everyone's going to have very polarizing reactions to them. And that's what I like the most about some of these movies.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think all of that is just to say, we're just trying to get out of the way at the start. The fact that both of us feel that all horror movies are valid, all movies are valid. This is not about shaming anyone's taste. This is not about gatekeeping. We really just want to celebrate these movies that kind of go unnoticed, or frankly, that some people are afraid of because they feel like they're snobby or boring or too intellectual or whatever. And we just want to say, there's no reason to not watch these movies. There are no gates. You can watch whatever you want. You can watch broadly, and these movies are worth exploring, and we love them.
We're not looking down our nose at any of these movies, but we are watching multiple maniacs through opera glasses.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think it's worth noting that probably, some of these movies you or I or both of us will be watching for the first time, and some of them we probably won't like, and that's fine, and that's part of the process as well.
Oh, I can't wait to vehemently discuss something I don't like on here. It's going to be fun. People are going to be mad at me.
Can't wait. With that all said, let's get into our very first movie. This is Ken Russell's 1971 magnum opus, The Devils.
Do you remember the first time your thoughts were turned to evil things?
He plies me with caresses, lustful, obscene. He enters my bed at night and takes from me that which is consecrated to my divine bridegroom, Jesus Christ.
And what form does this incubus take?
I guess I will try to broadly summarize this movie. So
good luck.
I know. The year is 1634. We're in a walled city in France. Oliver Reed plays a sexy priest named Grandier who's having trouble keeping his celibacy vow, to say the least. In the backdrop of all of this, the bubonic plague is going on and people are dying en masse. And also the Catholic Church is trying to drive the Protestants from the land by torturing them and murdering them savagely. In addition to all of this, Vanessa Redgrave plays a nun who is sexually obsessed with Grandier and is having violent masturbatory fantasies about him where like he's Jesus and she's doing dirty things to him on the cross. And she finds out that Grandier has secretly gotten married, which of course Catholic priests are not permitted to do. She freaks out and tells the powers that be that he's possessed by the devil. And then that kind of turns into mass hysteria among the nuns. And eventually Grandier is put to death in a really hideous, awful way. Does that about sum it up, Drusilla?
I mean, you could also summarize it as Oliver Reed is just too sexy to live.
Which I think also
applies to the plot.
I do think Oliver Reed is sexy in the 70s. I recently rewatched The Brood, and he wears a short robe in that, and I'm fucking into it, I have to say.
For context, this is like the year before 3 and 4 Musketeers, and like right before he and Ken Russell did Tommy. So think about like 3 Musketeers era, Oliver Reed with the mustache, and it's period setting, and he's just running around without a care in the world, but he has a priest collar on.
Yeah, later on
deeply hot.
He was, of course, a terrible alcoholic. So later on, he became not as hot. I watched some interviews from talk shows before we started recording, and there's like one from 1987 where he's super drunk on Letterman and like attacks David Letterman, and it's super awkward. And so, yeah, he kind of lost it. But in the 70s, he was looking good. So you're way more learned about this movie than I am. So maybe you can kind of walk us through the history.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start by mentioning from the top that I might have a little bias in discussing this movie, where a lot of people might rattle off like The Godfather or Citizen Kane or, I don't know, Forrest Gump as being the greatest film ever made.
Absolutely not.
Mine is the devil's. If you asked me at any point in my life what the greatest feat of the cinematic art form is, I would tell you Ken Russell's The Devil's, and I'd be thrown out of every room I was in. So I'm biased. I think this movie is a massive feat of artistic achievement. And you know who doesn't think that?
Who?
Warner Brothers and the Catholic Church. So for some context, Ken Russell, lovely little British gent, came up making films for the BBC and for British television, got his first major feature breaks with a couple period romantic melodramas in The Music Lovers and Women in Love, also starring Oliver Reed. And so he was given a copy of Aldous Huxley's The Devils of Loudun by a producer who owned the rights to both that book and a separate play based on the true events that this movie is based on. Oh yeah, everything that we're about to discuss that happens in this movie is based on 100% well-researched historical fact. So as insane as some things we're going to talk about are, they might be fabricated even just maybe a little bit, but like it's mostly true, and that's the fun part. So a producer approached him with the rights and said, what if we did this? And according to Ken Russell, he got a couple pages into the Huxley novel, immediately wanted to do it, and the jump-starting line for him was describing the exorcism of Mother Jean, the nun played by Vanessa Redgrave,
a hunchback nun played by Vanessa
hunchback nun who is too horny to live.
Too horny to be a nun, for sure.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
That describes her exorcism at one point in the events as being a rape in a public bathroom.
Yeah.
And that concept and that idea goes through the entire production design, score, and a lot of the performances, and it's that intense almost the whole ride. The production design is gorgeous and brilliant and feels almost Clockwork Orange futuristic.
Yeah.
For
set
being
design
such a period film.
Set design by
Derek Jarman.
Yep. Queer horror art house icon.
Of Edward II and Jubilee fame, one of my favorite filmmakers.
Love Jubilee.
We have such a confluence of queer punk energy on this set, compounded by the mad genius of someone like Ken Russell, and then the unhinged performances of Ollie Reed and Vanessa Redgrave, who at the time were such huge British royalty actors.
Yeah, this movie has a lot of pedigree. I mean, these are big name actors. It's not a small budget really for a movie like this.
It's massive.
It's Warner Brothers. Oh, speaking of Warner Brothers, I did read that this was actually a United Artists movie, and they read the first draft of his script and were hard pass, at which point Warner Brothers picked it up. So, I mean, at least Warner Brothers liked it enough to make it.
That tracks considering UA produced the previous two Ken Russell films.
Yeah.
So the sets are massive. They shot on Pinewood studio sound stages in England. I mean, if you look at the insane exteriors of the walls of Loudun designed by Derek Jarman, and the crazy sweeping crowd and crane shots in this, you would be like, oh yeah, this was shot at least in the British countryside, if not on location in France. you
Yeah.
would be incorrect. This is all sound stages.
Yeah.
It's nuts. This is like 40s Hollywood epic level production design. So it was released in 71. The British Board of Film Censorship, the BBFC, wouldn't let it out with a certain scene in it, 2 scenes in it, which we'll get to, which are pretty freaking intense. One of which is commonly referred to as the rape of Christ. So let that idea sit with you. So those were removed before it was allowed to be released. And it was released in England with, like a little bit of positive critical acclaim, but mostly the British press tore it apart as being a very blasphemous and angry film and a very, decadent, like overly indulgent on Ken Russell's part. The Catholic Church, seeing a movie claiming to be based on true events, which it is, about the Catholic Church, about exorcism, about nuns,
about torturing Protestants,
and like Christ-related erotic imagery, very quickly came in and denounced the film. And so by the time that it came to America, the MPAA was terrified of this movie. Warner Brothers, being an American company that produced it, was obligated to at least try and recoup their money here in the States. And so they bowed to the whims of the MPAA and cut even more out of the film. So they cut it from, the UK runtime was about 105 minutes, maybe a little bit less. They cut it down to like 90 minutes here in the States.
Wow.
Yeah, they cut it significantly. And they really didn't know what they had on their hands. And they gave it a very small release. It got an X rating, even at the severe amount that it was cut. And I would just like to quickly read a snippet from the US release poster that was put out by Warner Brothers in 1971. The poster is almost entirely copy, and then there's a very small image of Reed and Redgrave.
Great.
Below it. So this is what the poster for The Devils says. The Devils is not a film for everyone. It is a true story, carefully documented, historically accurate, a serious work by a distinguished filmmaker. As such, it is likely to be hailed as a masterpiece by many. And this is where it turns south. But because it is explicit and highly graphic in depicting the bizarre events that occurred in France in 1634, others will find it visually shocking and deeply disturbing. We feel a responsibility to alert you to this. It is our hope that only the audience that will appreciate The Devils will come to see it. So The Devils bombed in America.
Yeah.
I wonder why. And Ken Russell immediately turned around and went to MGM and made a G-rated 3-hour-long musical called The Boyfriend the same year. And his career kept going throughout the 70s. He made Tommy and Blitzomania and so many insane, amazing movies. And The Devils became like a mostly forgotten cult oddity for a long time.
You have a long history with this. I didn't hear about this movie until maybe 2018, 2019, and then didn't see it till 2020. I don't know why. I don't think I ever heard about it. And I saw it on Shudder in 2020, and there's been some debate when I tweeted about watching this movie. Some people told me that was excuse me, that was the unedited version that I'd seen. But when I saw the version that you sent me, I don't think it was, because the version that we watched for the podcast had all of these shots, some long, some short, where the transfer suddenly got really shoddy, which led me to believe that they were the scenes that were edited. So I don't think it was the unedited that was on Shudder.
Yeah. So after the US release in America in the 70s, it got a VHS release in like the late 80s, early 90s from Warner Brothers, and hasn't seen home video since. And so when I came to it in like 2010, 2011, maybe, it was always this like impossible to see movie.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's insane. Warner Brothers doesn't want you to see this movie. The Catholic Church doesn't want you to see this movie. So, of course, teenage me was like, I want to see this movie.
Of course, yeah.
And then everyone was like, well, you got to find this version, this version, this version. In the early 2000s, film critic Mark Kermode went through the archive at either the British Board of Film Censorship or just an archive in England, and found the Rape of Christ segment and a few other scenes from the end of the movie involving a bone.
Yeah. Oof.
Yeah. Which have been excised for even the UK release. He found them, took them to Ken Russell. Russell insisted on having them reinstated and a restored director's cut be made. Warner Brothers said no. And they went back to the BBFC, recut the movie, cleaned it up as much as they could from the print that they had available, and it was passed for censorship, and it played a few times in England in that full cut, but then it still wasn't granted access to be given a home video release in that cut. So the BFI put a DVD out a couple years later in like 2011, 2012.
Mm-hmm.
That was just the 1971 UK release cut. And that's kind of the only way to see the film these days. It occasionally pops up on, well, Filmstruck's gone, but the Criterion Channel or Shudder occasionally, but in really, really poor qualities. I believe it's just a rip of the old Warner VHS tape. And it used to play theatrically. I'm here in Los Angeles. It used to play theatrically here quite a bit at the Cine Family and at the Egyptian. I believe the New Beverly's played it before. However, at a screening of it in 2018 at the Egyptian, it was announced before the film ran that that would be the last time for the foreseeable future that print would play in this country.
Wow.
Warner Brothers had recalled the print and were no longer allowing it out for theatrical distribution.
Now, why do you think this is? Because for me, so this movie is very violent, very upsetting, very shocking. But to me, it doesn't feel more so than, say, Clockwork Orange, which also came out the same year, also by Warner Brothers, I believe. It doesn't feel any worse than, a given Lars von Trier movie or Sallow or Cannibal Holocaust, or a lot of movies that are pretty readily available. Do you think it's just like Catholic stuff that bothers people so much?
I think it is the religious element, because it's very blasphemous. I mean,
yes.
It posits Urban Grandier, the Oliver Reed character, as kind of the moral, quote-unquote, hero of the film, and he's an adulterous priest.
Right.
So that's like the first 5 minutes, and that's already like slapped down by the Catholic Church. The rest and everything that follows is quite offensive to certain Catholic audiences. Obviously not me, not being a Catholic, so ha 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 ha. I get the loophole. But I mean, listen, as anyone on Twitter will tell you, Warner Brothers snuck in a woman dressed as Vanessa Redgrave into the latest Space Jam movie.
I love that the new Space Jam movie has the devil's reference embedded.
So they're aware of it. They're aware that it has a fan base and that people want to see it. Also, and they're allowing it out for streaming. So, I mean, fingers crossed that hopefully it'll get some kind of physical release. I mean, maybe licensed to Criterion or someone like that, who will like put it out in a way to, approach it from an artistic lens, which, I mean, they did Salo and Antichrist. So come on, guys.
I mean, the Catholic Church can be like this sometimes. I remember learning in the 2000s when there were things like Prop 8 happening and, like these really homophobic laws popping up everywhere. One of the active parties in that was this organization called the Catholic League. And they seemed to have a lot of power, and they were popping up on the anti-gay side of these things all the time. And then somebody did some investigating, and the Catholic League was one dude. It was just one man who had put himself in this position of power. And it just was like such a peek behind the curtain, like Wizard of Oz style, at what some of these like big conservative institutions can be, but they have so much power. And I think that actually speaks to what this movie is talking about too, a little bit. But I guess that's an invitation to like start talking about some of the beats and moments in this movie and things that are cool to talk about, cool and notable to talk about. You mentioned earlier about the sort of grandness of the movie and the visual impact of it. I will say this movie is really beautiful and really impressively produced. I mean, at any given moment, 75% of the movie is like really intricate crowd scenes. So at any point, there'll be like dozens and dozens of bodies being, plague deaths being thrown into a pit, or in the background, you'll see a bunch of like Protestants on torture devices or things like that. And then it's just like, it reminded me so much of like Hieronymus Bosch painting of hell, because at any moment, if you pause this movie, there's going to be dozens of people on screen in this intricately choreographed moment, and anytime you pause this movie, it looks like a giant Renaissance painting. It's just,
and that's
so
only
epic.
The background action. That's just set dressing to say a crowd scene of the walls being torn down, or of Oliver Reed swashbuckling a man with an alligator. I'm sorry, a crocodile.
Drusilla,
how dare I?
Get it right.
Dare I? Yeah, it's insane. And even, later into the film, when we get I'm just going to say it as bluntly as I can, nun orgies.
Yeah.
It's equally as chaotic and filled. And that's one of Ken Russell's great strengths, is directing huge scale and crowd scenes. I mean, obviously he showed it off in the most famous way that he ever did with the Tommy, the Who film.
Yeah.
The way he choreographed huge crowds to music and also in Litzomania and all of his like music biopic films, ungodly brilliant. But here, where you don't have like a roaring 70s rock soundtrack to lean back on, you just have this really nightmarish score and these really shocking images compounding on top of each other with that grand scale. It does feel like you're in hell. It feels like there's no way out, that there's no sane even person or corner in all of Loudun or the universe.
Right. You did mention the nun orgy. We get an extended nun orgy, which is, I don't know how long, but very long. And
it feels like just the middle of the movie.
Yeah, it is like the whole second act, basically. It reminded me a little bit of the girls in the Crucible and their mass hysteria. So basically, allegedly, all of these nuns have been besotted by devils, as one of the powers that be, queer-coded powers that be mentions. And, they whip off their habits, and they have shaved heads. I don't know if that was the thing about nuns, but all the women in this have shaved heads, and they're in a chapel, and they're like ripping down the statuary and humping it. They're defecating on the on the floor. They're screaming. They're jacking off long candles, and then all the while there's like dozens of noble people in masquerade masks on the sidelines, like laughing at them. So it's this scene with like dozens and dozens of people that goes on forever, and it's just this wild mass hysteria nun orgy. A lot of the things that were cut, I think, were cut from that segment. Is that right? Because I felt like that was an area where some of the shots became sort of like very shoddy, and I thought like, oh, that must have been cut for a long time.
That's the Rape of Christ. So all of the nuns, after they are kind of playfully duped by the king, coming in and kind of making a mockery all of this, because he knows that this is all bullshit.
Yeah, and he's right.
And he's reveling in it. Same with all the other noblemen that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And as soon as he exits, it like hits a second wave of insanity, and the nuns tear down a depiction of the Christ figure.
Yeah.
And they go to town on him.
Yeah. They go to town on him. They sure do. Wait, can we talk about Louis the 14th? Because I love him so much.
Yes, we can. The incredibly queer-coded Louis the 14th.
Oh, love him. So the first shot of the movie is King Louis the 14th performing in the opera. And he is wearing a clamshell bikini, riding on a clamshell as the birth of Venus. So this is a thing that I know from other history pieces, that like royalty would, because they're so vain, they would like put themselves in the opera, and even if they had no talent, they would like star in a play or in the opera, and so everyone's clapping for him. And
you say that as if that doesn't happen these days.
No, it's true. It's absolutely true. You're right. So right away, he's very queer coded. And when he shows up in the nun orgy, he's being like carried on a platform by twinks. And on the platform with him is like, it's like a rickshaw, like an elaborate rickshaw. And on the rickshaw,
it's like a big sedan chair he's just laying on. You expect someone to be feeding grapes into his mouth the entire time.
It's very Cleopatra. Well, there is somebody who could be feeding him grapes, but I don't think actually is, which is like an 11-year-old boy. So it's like very, very heavily hinting that he's like a pederast or pedophile. I love him. I know that he's the bad guy, but he's so queer coded that he's like Governor Radcliffe from Pocahontas.
I would just like to remind you of your immediate pull quote of "He's a pedophile." Period. I love him. Josh Conkel, 2022.
This is why I'm like pilloried on Twitter every day of my life. Those thoughts are disconnected. I don't
sure they are,
because he's a pedophile. I mean, he's like such a terrible person, and he is the villain of the movie, or one of many villains actually. But he's just he's like camp. He's like a John Waters character, and I love that.
So that brings me to a question that I have for you.
Okay, great.
So during our introduction to the film and to him through this Birth of Venus set piece, which is the first thing you see in the entire movie.
Yeah.
So if you'd only seen the other two Ken Russell movies, like Women in Love and The Music Lovers, you'd be like, oh, cool. Another quaint little period melodrama with a little bit of flair to it. This will be interesting. He's introduced, and then he leans in with Cardinal Richelieu, who is also real life figure and was also Oliver Reed's enemy in the Three Musketeers films, but not played by Charlton Heston here. No. And is at that point, oh my god,
sorry, go on.
I want to see that. At that point, the score kicks in, and you realize that you're in for a time. And our title treatment, The Devils, falls over both of their faces in the reverse shots. So that ties into a pretty big theme of the film. Who or what are the devils?
You're asking me that question.
I'm asking you that question.
I think the devils is maybe our baser instincts. And more specifically, I think our inclination to cruelty and to power mongering and to hypocrisy, I guess, is what I would say. I mean, this does weirdly share a lot of parallels and themes with the play The Crucible to me. Like, I thought of The Crucible a lot, and both are concerned with people who have power for religious or political or monarchy reasons, who are hypocritical and who are doing something evil, like that is unjust against people who don't deserve it, for the purposes of gaining or hoarding power. Yeah, I guess that's what I would say. What do you think?
I mean, I absolutely agree. I think in a very literal sense, the movie is telling us from the bat that these two characters, Louis XIV and Cardinal Richelieu, are the epitome of the devils. They are the epitome of evil hell on earth, and they are corrupt monarchy politicians and religious
head of the church,
leaders.
Head of the state, and we get all these cutaways where they're alone together, and one of them, for instance, is like they're at, I guess, Versailles or somewhere, and King Louis is shooting people in bird suits for fun. like shooting them to death. So he shoots this person who's running in a bird suit. They fall down dead in a pond, and Louis laughs, and all the aristocrats laugh, and they're like, "Oh, another Protestant dead," or whatever. And so that like you realize that they've been like dressing up Protestants in bird suits to hunt. So you get that kind of cutaway of them a lot. Like the movie's telegraphing, these are evil queens, and they're both very queeny.
His entire performance is just maniacally giggling the entire film. But then also Cardinal Richelieu has one of the most terrifying cutaway set pieces ever, which is also one of the most Ken Russell set pieces ever. And it's like such a huge, massive set, and you only get this one short scene where he's being led down a hallway with his second in command priest who goes into Loudun and kind of sets up the exorcisms and stuff. And it's this one long tracking shot down these white, clean, like prison looking hallways.
Yeah.
And Cardinal Richelieu is not walking. He's leaned back on what looks like a dolly that's like stylized to look like a cross.
Oh, yes. Like Hannibal Lecter gets pushed
exactly like Hannibal Lecter. Exactly like Hannibal Lecter. And he's just very calmly talking to people because he's too good and too important to actually step foot on the ground and walk.
Yeah.
And you cannot tell me that Jonathan Demme didn't see that and said, "Oh, I know how to play Hannibal Lecter, and we'll put Anthony Hopkins on this thing, and we'll roll him in, and we'll shoot it just like the Devils."
I mean, I want to be rich enough that I don't have to do my own walking, and people will just push me around on a people mover.
I mean, would you rather the people mover or the sedan chair with the 11-year-old?
Well, I'm not a pedophile. Thank you very much. I mean, if it was like, a 35-year-old who was hot, then definitely the second thing.
Okay, we'll age him up. You can have the sedan chair.
I want to talk about, do you know how, off the top of your head, how old Ken Russell was when he made this? Because it was made in 1971, and they bring in, at some point, a witch hunter who aesthetically is pretty young and sort of like hippie-ish.
Oh, very much so.
So I wondered, and evil, because he's the fake witch hunter who causes a lot of harm and ultimately gets Grandier put to death. I wondered suddenly if he was trying to say anything about the hippie movement.
Ken Russell was 44 when he made this movie. Maybe 43. I think they shot it in 1970. But yeah, he was in his early 40s.
I just wonder, a lot of people my age, so I'm older than Drusilla is, listeners, by a lot. And a lot of people who are in there, a lot of people who are like older millennials or Gen X or older have a lot to say these days about Gen Z and the way that they, and I'm not casting any judgments on this right now myself, but the way that they virtue signal or like the tone policing or the trigger warnings. And I wondered if there was anything like that in the stew of this witch hunter character and Ken Russell for hippies, like the sort of contrast of the hippies being the free love movement and, the spiritual kind of awakening. And then this witch hunter character. I don't know. I don't know what I'm circling around, but I just wondered if there was a comment in there.
I mean, there is always going to be inherently with any generational like progress, there's always kind of like the kicking down of the generation behind. But I think based on the films that I've seen of him and knowing Ken Russell's relationship to like Roger Daltrey and like members of like The Who and other like, 60s British rock groups, that he was actually very much like connected to a lot of the youth movements that were going on in the 60s and 70s in England. I mean, he was a big proponent of the punk movement and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, maybe it was
I think it's less of a generational kick and more of an ideological kick at certain aspects of the like quote unquote like hippie movement. Because I mean, as we have seen from having now 40 plus years of perspective on that, a lot of those people who were free love hippies in the 60s became corporate capitalists by the 80s.
Yeah, I mean, you can see that in
Much,
like The Big Chill, you know?
yeah, which I
That's
love
what
that movie.
yeah, me too. I guess
But
that's what
like,
I was circling around. Is he like trying to point out any hypocrisy with
I
this
think he
generation in the
absolutely
movie?
is. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's a generational thing and more a specific ideological one connected to hippies. I mean, there's a meme that goes around Twitter all the time of like He-Man saying hippies are bad people pretending to be good and punks are good people pretending to be bad.
Yeah. I
And
think that's
like
true.
that's
In a lot of
wildly
cases.
accurate.
Yeah.
And I think that is very much at play here in The Devils.
It's also just an interesting aesthetic choice because it is like for 1971, a young, cool looking fashionable man.
He's got the
who
John
plays-
Lennon glasses. He's got the
Exactly.
long hair and the chain, like the necklaces and the chains. He
Right,
looks
I think
hot. And then he comes in raping nuns.
right, he's like sort of styled like Jim Morrison or something. Whereas I think in a traditional movie, that character would be cast as like a very conservative middle-aged man, and so it's just like a very interesting aesthetic casting choice, I think.
I mean, we've seen before, like Witchfinder General, who's Vincent Price with this very,
Right.
stylized period goatee and the like very staunch dress. You think about like Peter Cushing and the Twins of Evil and stuff like that. It's always an older, posh, conservative white man with an accent. And instead, it's this young, swinging. But it's this. Keep in mind, this is 71. This is not long after the Manson murders.
Yeah, that's right.
And so a charismatic young hippie man coming in, seducing and corrupting a large group of young women.
I didn't even think of that, but you're so right. That's such a smart observation. That's so interesting. I hadn't thought of that. What other Ken Russell movies have you seen?
I've seen a lot. So in the 70s was kind of his heyday of his grand epic. So The Devils was kind of the end of his romantic films.
Yeah.
And then he moved on to doing these kind of post The Music Lovers. He kind of moved on to these really specific grand biopics of composers that were really overly stylized. So you look at like Mahler or Litzomania, which Litzomania is nuts. That entire production design is just phallic through and through. But Roger Daltrey is fabulous in it. So Tommy obviously is huge and famous. And then by the 80s, he had lost a lot of cachet because his films were outrageously expensive.
Yeah.
Did not make a lot of money. So he really kind of turned around in the 80s and started making kind of more low budget genre related films in the UK and in America. And that's when we get like Altered States, which is like unlike anything you've ever seen. It's unlike any Ken Russell movie before or after, really.
Yeah.
But it does retain a lot of the kind of fucked up religious symbology from The Devils, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah.
But then we get some of his most interesting films in the 80s with Crimes of Passion.
Mm-hmm. I've never seen that.
Kathleen Turner as a sex worker named China Blue, and Anthony Perkins as an obsessed degenerate priest who huffs poppers while like watching her go to town, and there is a murderous dildo.
Oh my God, that sounds iconic. Anthony Perkins is one of my celebrity crushes. Whenever I sometimes, like every 6 months or so, I go on a deep dive where I look at pictures of him and Tab Hunter, and I just imagine the Sean Cody videos that could have been made between the two of them.
I love those two so much. Talk about a tragic Hollywood coupling.
I know.
But then we got what I think is one of Ken Russell's greatest works, which is Lair of the White Worm.
Yes, we should do that sometime. It's on our list for sure.
It's baby Hugh Grant.
Yep.
And baby Doctor Who. One of the Doctor Whos. Peter Capaldi.
Yeah, I've never seen that. Doctor Who. I've seen Lair of the White Worm.
We get it. You're cool.
No, I'm not cool. I listen. I play Dungeons and Dragons once a week, so I'm not cool. But I just never watched Doctor Who.
But Lair of the White Worm is again a very phallic, vampire film that like From a 2022 lens, I have discussed with many other trans girls. That's a pretty trans vampire flick you got there, Ken. It's great. I love that movie.
It's so great. I saw this when I was like a little boy, because I've only seen it once and it was on cable, so it must have been relatively new. But Ken Russell's movie Horror, which is another kind of
Russell, unrelated.
Yeah, it's sort of like another lost film. But I must have been like 10, and I watched it late one night by myself on cable. And it's a movie about a sex worker, and she's talking to the camera most of the time, sort of Ferris Bueller or Sex and the City season 1 style. And I just remember being super fascinating and funny and touching, and I really loved it. I mean, I was 10, so what do I know? But I'd be interested to see that again.
I would love to. Also, who the hell is allowing 10-year-old Joshua Conkel to watch a movie called Whore?
And well, my parents went to bed at like 9 and we had cable, so I would stay up in the summers, and that's how I watched horror movies too. That's how I would watch, like Puppet Master and crap like that at like 2 a.m. on Cinemax.
Well, their early sleep schedules did a lot for your personality, I have to say.
Yeah, it's true. I was raised by like USA Up All Night, not my parents.
Oh my god.
Well,
continue.
Go ahead.
No,
oh,
all you.
Oh, all right, I will continue. So I wanted to play a game that we sort of invented offline called Have They Seen It? Where we ask if a certain celebrity has seen the movie that we are discussing and if they liked it or what their thoughts are. And I'm going to go first. You mentioned Charlton Heston. Do you think Charlton Heston has seen The Devils? And if he has, do you think he likes it?
I think if Charlton Heston walked past a poster or a billboard for The Devils in 1971, he would have spat on it and walked away. So I vehemently don't think he's seen it. You mentioned Anthony Perkins.
Yeah.
Who worked with Ken Russell. Do you think Anthony Perkins saw The Devils? If so...
I think Anthony Perkins saw The Devils, and I think he likes it. I think he really loved it. I think he has a very refined palate for everything.
I mean, he was in Hitchcock and Orson Welles films. The man had taste.
Yeah, I think he was, he was a gay man, and I think I think he had refined taste. I think he saw The Devils. I think he liked The Devils. I gotta give somebody to you. Elvira, do you think Elvira has seen The Devils? And if so, do you think she likes it?
I think Elvira loves The Devils. In fact, if Cassandra's listening, I would pay her so much money to host an introduction to The Devils for Shudder or someone. Oh my god, I would love to see that.
Yeah.
I want to hear Elvira going on about Vanessa Redgrave. Actually, what I want to see is Elvira seducing Mother Jean from The Devils. I want that to be like the lost ending of this movie, is that Mother Jean is left there alone with her charred bone to play with. And then Elvira comes in her Cadillac and takes her away to Las Vegas.
God, I love Elvira. I want her to, I just want to watch her do anything. Wait, now you have to give me somebody.
Okay. Ronald Reagan. What do you think Ronald Reagan thought of The Devils?
Ronald Reagan hasn't seen The Devils, but he's heard of it, and he's against it. I think Nancy and Ronald, because here's the thing about the Reagans, they're Hollywood people, and they are conservative Republicans, but they still had all these like sort of Rock Hudson old Hollywood ties. So I think that they have friends who are liberal and cool and have seen The Devils, but they have not seen it, first of all. And even if they would have liked it, they couldn't pretend to like it because of their position in America in the Republican Party. So that's my feeling about them.
Okay. Really quickly, someone that was also in a Ken Russell film that is still around today and is a beloved queer icon. I want to know, do you think Elton John has seen The Devils, and what does he think of it?
Oh God, people are going to get mad at me for this. My instinct is that Elton John has not seen The Devils. I don't think Elton John's heard of The Devils. And here's my thinking, and please, I mean, people are going to get mad and I can't do anything about that. I think that secretly Elton John is not cool. I think I think he's like secretly kind of nerdy, and like not that sophisticated. God, that sounds so snobby and awful. That's not to denigrate his position as a rock star and a super important person and pop culture figure. I just think in his private life, I think he's like watching The Lion King and not The Devils.
I love that the only thing in your mind that Elton John watches are things that Elton John worked on.
I think Elton John is like my parents who are like, I don't want to watch that. That seems sad. I just want to watch this Pixar movie. That seems easier.
I can definitely see that. But you don't think that at any point in the 70s he caught the Devils?
I feel like maybe he would have been taken to a screening of it or something, but he would have been fucked up and probably didn't like it or was bored by it and then like doesn't remember it.
Yeah, he probably has no memory of seeing the Devils.
Like my mom saw the band MC5 when she was a teenager and got a black eye at the concert. But when you talk to her about it, I found this out in my 30s because she doesn't like MC5, so she's not like she would talk about it, right? So she would tell me like, "Oh, I saw one of their shows. It was so awful and loud and blah blah." You know what I mean? Like I feel like that's how Elton John is with the Devils.
Well, I'm sorry that your mom can't kick out the jams. That's
I know
disappointing.
She can't. Teresa does not kick out the jams. She's a really cool lady in many ways, but not in that way.
Ugh. Maybe they were talking to her when they said kick out the jams, motherfucker, because they saw that she was the one not kicking them out. And they were so disappointed. They had to use fruity language.
She is the jams, and they're kicking her out of their show. Like, Teresa, please leave.
Oh my God. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
I think...
Okay, so The Devils. What do you think? Where does it stand today? Do you think it's worth a look? And do you think it sits more in the horror category or more in the art house category?
I think that this sits probably more in the art house category. I mean, I think a lot of movies, there will be some people who are like, oh, that's not art house or that's not horror, which is to be expected. But it's also a question that I don't really care about. You know, I feel like every 6 months people will be like, Silence of the Lambs is not a horror movie. And it's like, who cares? Like, who cares about this?
As a trans person, I can tell you that movie's horrifying.
Yeah, I bet it would be as a trans person. Yeah, I just... it's not an important question to me, I guess. But I will say, if I'm being cornered to answering the question, which I am, you are literally have a knife to my throat or have me in a corner. Listeners, you can't see it, but that's what's happening. I would say it leans more art house than horror, but it does make me feel dread the whole time. So what's not horrific about that?
It's fair.
Yeah. What about you?
I mean, I'm going to go art house solely for the fact that, like, I mean, I count Salo in the same category, and I think, man, what a great double bill this would be.
I know it would be.
Oh, coprophagia, the two-timer.
But if you think about it, in a video store, like this could be on a shelf next to Amadeus and Marie Antoinette as like a historical drama, because it is a historical drama.
Yeah. I feel like, you know, if your local video store in the 90s was lucky enough to have a tape of this, they would have slapped it in the horror section just because it's called The Devils.
Yeah.
And that's not fair to this movie.
No.
However, the horror audiences obviously love this film because there's so much in here for horror audiences to love.
They're the audience that's most primed to enjoy this movie, I think.
Yeah, like, if you want to talk about a great 70s film about exorcisms, leave William Friedkin alone. Check this one out.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Completely.
But I think it's a crazy important movie for modern audiences, and I think it's well overdue of rediscovery.
Agreed.
So, if you can find a copy, no matter the cut, no matter the runtime, like, it's super cool if you can see the longest version, but that's not feasible. So get yourself a region-free Blu-ray player and get the British DVD. See if you can find a VHS tape. If it pops up on Shudder or something, I'm sure we'll tweet about it.
The Devil's 2 thumbs up from Bloodhaus.
Oh, vehemently, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that may be it for episode 1. Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Hyde Sister. So it's Sister Hyde inverted. And what about you, Josh?
I'm on Twitter, unfortunately, at Joshua Conkel. And yeah, please rate our show on iTunes if you like it. Share it with your friends. If you don't like it, I don't care. Shut up about it. And you can email us. I set up an email address, bloodhauspod@gmail. That's house, Haus, as in like Bauhaus. Yeah. Yay, episode 1 in the can.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, awesome. Come join us back next week for something a bit more modern, a bit more disturbing in certain aspects, and a bit more A24.
Yay.